Hello, everyone. It's Joe here, broadcasting from the big city, Salta, Alaska. Population 689, warm and friendly souls. It's a hot summer day. It's 58 degrees, actually. About 8 o'clock at night. Thought I'd come in and start on part two on the story about the stories of the North. Many of you might be familiar with part one. If not, it should be on the subscriber page. You can just scroll down and find it, and that way you get caught up. So we will begin talking about Peter Charlie, continuing our story about Peter Charlie from part one. But before I start, I want to let you know that as I'm talking here, these events happened 40 years ago. So the way it's beginning is I kind of have planned on what I'm going to tell you, but as I go along, my memories keep coming up of different things. It's like if you take a match and strike it to some kindling on a campfire. Let's say birch bark, and once the birch bark gets going, then it ignites the twigs, and once the twigs get going, it ignites the bigger sticks, and then eventually the logs, and then you have a flame of 10 feet high. Well, that's how my memories seem to work. As soon as you dig up something small, more memories come up and it just takes off. So I only plan on doing like a 30 or 40 minute audio here, but I might have to have a part three. So hang in there. And I am not going back and cutting and deleting and editing because it kind of takes away the real feeling of this. I mean, just pretend that I'm sitting at a table with a big hot cup of coffee, and you're across the table from me, and we're telling stories to each other. So grab a big pot of coffee or a bowl of popcorn, grab your Malamute, sit on the couch. Malamutes love popcorn. You gotta you gotta get some popcorn for him or her, whatever you have. If you don't have Malamutes and you have Chihuahuas, give it to your Chihuahua. I mean, dogs love popcorn, and that's what I always do. I mean, I always feed my dogs popcorn. They just love it. So we're gonna begin about Peter Charlie, the legendary hunter. And I took a few notes I want to cover, but these notes are just they are just not working out. So, but I do want to acknowledge that I really appreciate everybody signing up for the subscription. It does help pay for the dog food. Um, every bit helps. And I also want to thank our good Lord for allowing us to do this, and thank Him for the gift of life. We all can be thankful for that, and for His crucifixion to save our souls. Life eternal is what matters in this life, and everything else will disappear except life eternal. So let's begin. So Peter Charlie, one day, he says, Joe, well, he didn't call me Joe. He never called me Joe. He always called me Crazy White Man. I don't know why. I don't know. I'm always, in case I flub up on this series, rather than going back and cutting, deleting it, making it sound real pretty, I'm just going to keep rolling with it. And, no one's perfect, and I'm going to flub up. And everyone flubs up here and there. And we're all different, so it makes kind of more interesting stories. And we're all created from a different mold, I guess you want to say. And there's not any people on earth that are similar. We all have different DNA, different fingerprints. Everything is different. But I think when the good Lord created my mold, He probably noticed it was pretty messed up. And I bet you He broke that mold and He said, never again will I make that mistake. So that's where I come along, and that's probably why no one else is like me. Um, let's get back to the story. So Peter Charlie, he said, "White man, come over tonight. Bring your rifle." He didn't say to me words. He just commanded. I said, "Bring over your rifle." I said, "Okay." So I went back to cabin. I was over there having coffee. He said, "Just come back, get your rifle." So I brought my rifle back to Charlie and Peter Charlie, and he handed me a file and some sandpaper. He says, "File that front sight down so it's razor thin and it shines like the sun." Oh, I gotta stop the story, folks. Sorry, but I'll be back tomorrow. We'll continue. My dogs are howling and carrying on, so I think something's going on. These Malamutes are just like school children. Like, if you put a bunch of 12-year-old school kids together, it's just like the Malamutes. I mean, there's always something going on. Someone's squabbling, someone's arguing, someone's, trying to outdo each other, trying to impress the girls, or girls trying to impress the boys. So I'll be right back, and tomorrow morning, and we'll finish our story about Peter Charlie in the northern Canadian wilderness. Hello, everyone. I'm back. Boy, it was a rough night last night. The first ruckus was around 8 o'clock p.m. in the dog yard. We have about 45 Malamutes, so it can get pretty loud when someone's acting up and I don't know, acting up. They can just be playing with each other and everybody gets jealous and they want to play with them. That's basically what was going on last night. So I had to go out and see what's going on because you never know. Sometimes a moose comes up and causes a ruckus. And so I went out there. It was fine. Then, about 3 a.m. in the morning, I heard one heck of a ruckus. So I went out there. You got to remember that it's still daylight at 3 a.m. So it doesn't matter what time of the day. These dogs don't know night and day. They know that it's just sun. It's light out and it's time to play 24/7. And so I opened the front door at 3 a.m. and there, sitting on the front steps, is Dalton and Winston, just sitting there looking at the door. And I know what they were thinking. They were thinking, this is where we used to eat popcorn, and we've come back to get more popcorn. So what happened was they dug out underneath the pen and, of course, escaped. And that caused everyone else to get jealous. And, Malamutes get jealous of each other. And so they sit at the steps. But it's interesting that just like, school children, they copy each other. And Atlas saw how they dug out from underneath the pen. And so he did too. But he didn't get away. He didn't follow him. He went to the girls' yard. And so he was with them, trying to strut his stuff, impress the girls, and it really caused the girls to get jealous amongst each other. And that's what caused the biggest ruckus, was the girls arguing, and they liked Atlas. He is a handsome dog. And so it was a rough night. So I got up at 3 a.m. and put everybody away and fixed a few fences. And I'm telling you, if you ever train a team of Alaska Malamutes, you have to look at them just like they're a bunch of 12-year-old kids and going through the stage of life, when they're always trying to discover new ways, new things to get attention from their peers. I mean, we've always experienced the person or class, long ago, maybe burst out, said a joke or something, gets everybody laughing. Well, that's how Alaska Malamutes are. They're always pushing an envelope, always trying to get attention. And but that's the way I look at them. They're just a bunch of children. You got to treat them that way. Can't be dominant. You can't be a dictatorship role. You have to be just a school teacher or a coach, as far as having a team of them, you have to be a coach. Encourage them and discourage the bad behaviors and encourage the good behaviors. So let's get back to the story. Let's see, we left off with Peter Charlie and filing down the sights on my rifle. So after he inspected my rifle sight, he gave it approval, and I sat it down. He says, "Okay, we're going hunting tomorrow." I said, "We are, Charlie? You?" I didn't want to say that, but it just came out. He grumbled, "Yes, I'm going hunting." All right. The poor man could hardly get around, but that's all right. He was going to give it a shot, and I really admired him. And he knew probably well that this would be his last hunt. So he started packing his bags, and he said, "Go home and pack your stuff. It'll be about a 3 or 4 day hunt." I says, "All right." He says, "Bring your sleeping bag." So he said, "Don't bother with a tent. We sleep under the stars." I said, "Okay, I'll do that." So I rushed home, and but before I opened the door, I said, "Charlie, what time do I be here in the morning?" He didn't say anything. Those people back then, they didn't have clocks. They had clocks, but they didn't look at them. They didn't, they didn't go in. He's just be here in the morning. Oh, I said, "Okay." Well, I'm thinking to myself, he's a early rider, so I'll be here about between 5 and 6. So I rushed home, and I before I left, I said, "See you later. I'll see you in the morning." He said, "Yes, I'll see you after." And he always said that. A lot of the natives back then always said, "I'll see you after." And I always wondered, what did that mean? After 6, after 5, after 10? I don't know. But that's just one of the sayings that "I'll see you after." And maybe we say "I'll see you later." They say "I see you after." You know, we all live in these different cultures, and those folks back then, they didn't go by a clock whatsoever. They went by the seasons, and it's interesting. I think if I got to have a watch. I have to know what time I'm going to do things. If I want to get up at 4, I have a alarm clock wake me up at 4. Although I normally wake up at 4:30 naturally. And I think if I gave Peter Charlie, I'm thinking about this. If I gave him a nice brand new shiny watch, I bet he would somehow figure out how to attach hooks to it, fishing hooks, and use it for a lake trout lure and catch lake trout with it. I mean, that's about how much use they have, or they had, for watches and clocks back then. It's a really interesting culture. I really enjoyed it. But, we're all raised in different cultures, and each culture is different and unique. And it's one of the beauties of our world is that we're all from different cultures. And can you imagine being all one culture, everyone think the same? It'd be boring. One thing though, yeah, one thing though we do learn about having different cultures is that we learn how to be patient and tolerant, and we learn humility, which is a priceless virtue to have. I think if we were all one culture, would be like a bunch of robots, everybody doing the same thing, and there probably wouldn't be much innovation or invention because would be all one frame of thought. It'd be quite boring world. So I respect all cultures, and there's a lot of weaknesses, and most all of our cultures there's weaknesses, but that's life. That's what teaches us tolerance, patience, and humility. Otherwise, we would probably never learn these, most important virtues. So we get on with a story here. I always go off on a tangent about stuff. So I packed up my bags and threw a little bit of food in there, not much. I had some dried moose meat and some dried beaver fat people gave me, and a few dried salmon. that folks had given me, and I put them in my pack. I figured we'd get a moose right away, so it's not a big deal. I wasn't gonna pack a bunch, and but I was wrong. And so I got up 5, you know, all ready to go, 5:30 in the morning. Put my boots on. It was pretty chilly that morning for that time of year. It was fall time, and so I opened the door, and the stars were shining bright, and a nice, cool, crisp air. And sometimes you can just smell it. It's just clean in the fall time, with just starting to cool off. And I hiked over Charlie's place, Peter Charlie's place. I went to knock on the door, and he was just letting his dog out. And he opened the door about the same time I'm getting ready to knock, and he grinned ear to ear. He was happy to see me. He was happy to see me come that early, so he can really get going. I could tell he was an early rider, probably from a whole lifetime of hunting. You have to get out there early before the moose can start moving around. You want to try to get them while they're bedded down by the ponds and swamps and whatnot. So he put a dog outside, put a big dish of food beside him, and chained him to the doghouse, and a big bucket of water, and invited me to come in. And so he cooked up a big cup of coffee for me, and we sat down, and he kept looking out the window. He said, "Ralph is going to come soon and pick us up." I said, "All right." So I get to meet some more people. Some of Charlie's friends, Peter Charlie's friends. I figured, well, it's going to be good people, friendly. Boy, I was surprised. So here comes the old beat up pickup truck barreling down the road, come to a screeching halt in front of Peter Charlie's cabin. And it was just starting to get a little bit light. I saw one heck of a burly man get out of this driver's seat, slam the door. He said, "You ready to go, Charlie?" Peter Charlie. Boy, he was a rough looking guy. I mean, his shoulders was broad as a door, and he was stocky. And I said, "Holy smokes. I bet he can pack some moose." That's the only thing I was thinking about. So Peter Charlie smiled, put his pack in the back of the truck, and put his rifle in the cab with him. He didn't want that to get cold. He wanted to keep it clean. So I did the same. I went to jump in the cab, and old Ralph, he said, "No white men allowed in my cab. You sit in the back like a dog." I said, "Oh." I said, "All right. Well, I am white, I guess. So I don't think I'm a dog, but nonetheless, I'll sit in the back. I'm just glad to go." So I climbed the back, and he took off before I even had a chance to sit down. And boy, the wind chill was cold. He was barreling down those old logging dirt roads like he was running from hell. I mean, he was just going. I think he was doing it for fun, just to see me bounce around back there. But nonetheless, I was going moose hunting with the legendary hunter Peter Charlie. I was happy. So finally, after quite a while, it seemed like a good hour, finally come to a stop. Well, I was relieved. I was relieved. And we pulled up to another pickup truck that was already there, and a couple of gentlemen come out, and they were kind of arguing with Peter a little bit, and with Ralph. I couldn't understand their language, but I heard white man quite a bit. They didn't want me to come along. But I was there, and Peter had to say he was the elder. He was a boss. So that's what was that. We just continued on. So everybody grabbed their packs and rifles, and by then it was daylight, and we headed off in the woods. And Peter told everyone to spread out 50 feet apart, and we'll walk through the woods quietly. Now, this is one thing I couldn't do, like these guys. These guys could walk quietly. You couldn't even hear them walk. It was like walking on air. And here I was snapping twigs, and everybody gave me a dirty look. I'm doing the best I could. So we hunted all day long, and No luck. I was thinking about the small rations I put in my pack. I said, oh boy, I was young, needed lots to eat. Back then, when you're young, active, you really can put down some calories, and I didn't have it in my pack, so, but I figured, well, I'll endure, not a big deal. So we made camp, built a big fire underneath it looked like a big pine tree, and everybody bedding down next to it. And Peter Charlie pulled out his coffee pot, and this was by a creek, dipped some water out of the creek and boiled up some coffee, and everybody was kind of doing their own thing, making their own dinner, and I was kind of nibbling on my rations of moose meat and a little bit of dried salmon. But it wasn't much. I said, oh man, it's going to be a rough day tomorrow. I'm going to be walking all day on an empty stomach. Ralph was looking at me, an old burly guy. He was like, he reminded me in the shadows of the firelight. He reminded me of a bear, just a bear sitting there eyeing me. I said, oh man. And so I caught the whiff of everyone's food. Oh, it smelled good. Everybody was cooking salmon and fresh moose meat, and here I was just nibbling on this dried stuff like cardboard. And finally, Ralph come over to me. He said, "Look, here's some fresh salmon for you. I just smoked it this fall, and here's how you cook it. Grab you a stick, peel the bark off of it, and then he showed me how to weave the strips of dried salmon. It wasn't really dried. It was kind of oily, soft textured dried salmon. Wasn't hard and cardboard like mine. Weed it through a stick. He said, now when it starts sizzling and the oil starts dripping down to the fire and sparking, that's when it's time to eat. And here's some salt. Put some salt on it. Oh, I tell you what, that was the best. I can still taste it. It was so good. In my mind, I can still taste that smoked salmon sizzling over a fire. It's the most delicious food in the world. I just can't. I mean, that is just priceless. And so I thought, well, maybe these guys will kind of warm up to me eventually. I mean, how can skin color actually matter? But that's just one of the weaknesses of all of our cultures is that we judge each other sometimes, maybe not all of us, by skin color. Too bad, because we're all from the same creator. But nonetheless, this is life, and we just deal with it. We go with the blows. We roll with it. So I felt pretty good about that. I felt full, and I was happy. I was ready to go. So everyone kind of let the fire die down, and kind of, it was glowing, and everybody just started climbing in their sleeping bags without saying a word and went to sleep. I thought it was kind of strange, such a quiet culture. No one really says much to anyone. It's just everybody knew what we were to do, to get some sleep for tomorrow. No plans. We're just kind of sleep and get up whenever we get up and go. And we didn't need alarm clock or a clock or watches or nothing. So I did the same. I kind of enjoyed that lifestyle. And so, of course, I was the first one up, and just how my nature is. And I started the fire, got it going, and everybody woke up afterwards once they heard the crackling of the sticks going and the flames rising. They were happy to see it going. Kind of nice. So they all put their big pots of coffee on, fried some. They had actually flour and water with them. They got the water out of the creek, but they actually have flour with them. And they would make biscuits right over the fire. They had flour and oil, and they would just fry these biscuits and salmon is what they lived on. And of course, moose meat. But mainly I saw them eating biscuits and salmon. It's incredible. And coffee, vast amounts of coffee. I'll tell you what, if a brewer would make a fortune off these people if they still drink coffee like that. So after we ate, had good hearty breakfast, Ralph gave me some more smoked salmon and a big pot of coffee. We headed out, packed our bags, headed out. We did the same thing. Peter Charlie was the eldest, the elder of the group, and he was the boss. And he told us lined out, space each other out, and we walked, through the cedar swamps and woods and trying to be quiet. I was trying to be quiet. Those guys didn't have a problem with that. They just silent walkers. And suddenly I saw Peter Charlie. Peter Charlie wasn't getting around really well, and he took a fall right in the muck, and he fell on his rifle. I said, "Oh man!" I mean, that rifle, that was like you know, his baby. I mean, I could see the look on his face. He was just really, really taken back and kind of discouraged. I mean, this guy's a legendary hunter. I mean, everybody knew him around for 100 miles. And here he slammed his rifle in the muck. One of the things you never do. So he shook it off, wiped off his rifle the best he could, and we continued on. And suddenly, Peter stopped and raised his arm. And we all knew without saying what that meant. And there before us in the meadow, a couple hundred yards away, was a moose just standing there feeding, chewing his cud. And Peter raised his rifle. Now these old 303 Britishes, they held 9 rounds. And then you put one round in the chamber. Or you could put one round in the chamber and put 9 in the clip. You have 10 rounds in. But these guys would never put one in the chamber until they saw an animal. And they said, don't, and they told me, he said, don't ever put one on top until you see something. And what they meant was chambered. So he went to put one on top, chambered around, and he had one heck of a time. I think that mud and everything got in there. And nonetheless, he finally got one in there and raised his rifle and placed his rifle next to it against a tree so he could get a steadier shot. The moose was quite a ways away. For iron sights, it's a good distance. And his rifle wouldn't fire. It just wouldn't fire. He tried to run another round up top. It just got stuck. It got totally jammed. And so Ralph, who was on the other side of him, started raising his rifle. And old Peter, he gave a hand signal that was obviously put him in his place. Because according to their tradition, Peter Charlie chose who shot that moose. And so Ralph put his rifle back down, held it, cradled it, and just stared at him. And Peter Charlie, he looked at me and he pointed to me. I didn't know what this meant. And the gentleman next to me, to my left, he says, shoot it, shoot it. And so I pulled up and I could see my sight at the end of my barrel like it was glowing. Otherwise, I'd never see it in that low light. It was because of Peter Charlie had me file that down and make it shining and very thin like a razor blade. I knew exactly where to place that sight. And I just pulled up and shot without even hesitating. And that moose went down. And instantly, Peter started laughing and slapping his knee like that's the greatest thing he's ever seen in his life. Some white man just pull up and drop a moose. And holy smokes, I've never seen him celebrate like that. He was just happy. I think, he got, kind of talked down on to from everyone else for bringing a white man, and here the white man shot this moose. So he felt relieved that I was able to pull it off. And so then the work starts. We head on over to the moose, and those guys cut that moose up into pieces with just a knife. They didn't need a saw, they didn't need a hatchet, nothing. They knew where every joint was and how to take it apart. They were experts at this. Obviously, this is their livelihood. And everyone started, tying the meat to the packs. And Peter Charlie cut the brisket out nice and clean, put that in his pack. That's all he could carry, is just a brisket, the best part of the moose. And so we packed the moose back to our old campsite, laid it on spruce boughs so it to cool, covered up so the ravens wouldn't get it, and went back for another load. And we relayed it back to the truck. So we had a lot of meat. And of course, tradition back there was you kept what you packed. So Peter and Charlie and I had a good amount, and everybody had a good amount of meat. And everybody went their ways. And well, the dogs are barking again. I gotta check this out. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I got some girls in season out there. They're getting the boys all riled up. So we'll get back to the story. So everybody had good meat, good pile of meat to take home to their families. And everybody was in good spirits. And Ralph come over to me before I climbed in the back of the truck. He said, "You can sit up in the cab." Thanks. I was really surprised at that. He said, "By the way, why don't you come over and visit? I have a proposal for you." I says, "Sure. I'll come over as soon as I get back and put the meat away." He is fine. I'll see you after. So we rolled on back to the village, and Peter and Charlie and I put the meat away and hung it up. And I strolled on over to Ralph's place, knocked on his door, and he welcomed me in. And he was married and had 4 daughters and big family, a lot of mouths to feed. And we got talking over a cup of coffee for a while, or maybe it was several cups of coffee. And he told me he was a logger, and he would like to go back to his old tradition of trapping that his father and grandfather and on down the line have done for hundreds of years. But he just didn't have time. He was busy working in the logging industry, trying to get a paycheck every week. And he says, "I have a trap line." Back then the government issued the natives huge, large, vast amount of land to trap on. And no one else was allowed to trap on these tracts of land except them. And he gave me a map. He says, "Here's my trap line." He said, "I'll tell you what, you can run that trap line and you give me a certain percentage of the fur you catch." I said, "You bet." I mean, that just sounds exciting to actually run a trap line in the far north. There weren't any cabins on the trap line, so it was just a matter of me camping every night and traveling on snowshoes. And so this is where the adventure really begins. But this will be for another time. I have so many, like I said, memories are like, when you bring up one memory, it's like a spark that ignites a fire. And I could go on forever, but for right now, did you know that average attention span of the videos I post up on Facebook is between 3 and 10 seconds? It's incredible. So if you've listened through this entire audio, you're well above the average. So anyhow, I appreciate you stopping by and listening to the story, and God bless, and hope you find, some kind of nuggets out of it that you can keep and remember. But in the meantime, I'll talk to you next time. God bless.